Best Podcast Ever is sponsored by the Gertzberg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertzberglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out Cover My Six, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermysix.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Stay tuned after the show for a legal tip from Gene Friedman, who will talk about limited liability companies classifying themselves as S corporations.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
And he is always very well dressed.
Hi, Molly Gebler.
Hey, Alex Gertzberg.
What are you doing, dude?
I am putting my phone on airplane mode.
You are?
Yes.
That's good. That's important.
It is. It is.
We don't want
important.
to piss off the producer. She's going to start yelling at us.
I know, but of course she doesn't yell. We love her.
Nellie doesn't yell vocally. She yells in spirit. You know what I mean? Like she'll talk, and then I'll be like, "Oh man, she's mad at me. She's yelling in my head."
That was a lot of coughing in that episode, Molly, and I know she's upset.
She's upset. Yeah.
But we love her.
We do love her.
We do.
She's good people.
Yes, she's awesome people.
I've spent a lot of time with her lately. We went to Lake Farm Park. Have you been there?
I have.
So much
Not
fun.
Recently.
It's fun. It's good
My
stuff
kids
over
are a
there.
little older, so.
You're never too old to go to a working farm, Molly Gebler.
That's true. Have you ever taken the kids to Kelly's Working Well?
No, that's over here in Chagrin, right? No, but Nellie and I were having a podcast meeting. No, it wasn't a podcast. You had been there. We were having a meeting.
Cat's out of the bag now. Am I fired?
No, it wasn't. No, it was a different meeting. And we met the husband of the woman who runs that.
Yeah, at Starbucks.
Yeah, at Starbucks. Yeah. And he was reading a book about like neurophysics or something like that, like some and we're like, what do you read? And he said, I'm just reading this for fun. And it was like a college textbook on neuro something.
I love it. I was just talking to somebody, and as I've mentioned this before, I need to have something in my phone because I mentioned to people you should be on the podcast, and then I forget, and it was just somebody at the office today.
You should get Evernote for that, Molly. Do you ever use Evernote?
I do. Yeah. I have Color Notes, which is the same thing. But yes, I know, and I believe I even have one that's called
Podcast Guests.
Yes.
So what are you complaining about?
I just forget that I have it.
Yeah.
Because you're in the moment, and then you say it to them, and then you're continuing whatever you were meeting them for, and then you forget. So how are you doing?
I'm good.
I feel like it's been forever. Did we have a podcast last Monday?
Let me catch you up on some things.
Tell me, please.
First off, I went to Asheville, North Carolina. Have you ever been there?
Yes, you did.
Such a great... Have you been there?
I don't think so.
You got to go.
Okay.
Once you get over your fear of flying,
well, you could drive to North Carolina.
You can, but you drive to New York, so that's Asheville, North Carolina is my second favorite city on the planet behind Chagrin Falls.
I think you did post that on Facebook.
Did. Man, it was so cool. So we flew into Charlotte and then rented a car and drove to
who?
My friend Tiffany and I, and we drove to Asheville. And we decided we were just going to stop off at random mountain towns along the way. It's all Blue Ridge Mountains, right? And we stopped at this town called Hickory. And then we stopped at a town called Black Mountain, which was amazing. And then we went to Asheville. And all three of those towns were really quaint and scenic. And the people in all of them were very cool and very progressive. Black Mountain actually reminds me a lot of Chagrin Falls in that you can squint and imagine that it looks exactly like it looked 100 years ago, except without the cars, you know? And there's all these cool bars, and the World Cup was on, so we watched the World Cup everywhere we went.
And what was your... Like, why there? Like,
it was just
did you throw a dart at a map? Like,
kind of, yeah.
Okay.
We on Monday of that week, we said, let's go someplace next weekend. And among the possibilities were Quebec or New Orleans or D.C., New York. And I was really pushing for Greenville, South Carolina, which is a really cool town too. You ever been there? Awesome town. Really cool town, yeah. And she was really pushing for Asheville, so we compromised and said, well, let's go to Asheville and then we'll stop by Greenville on the way back. And we did exactly that, and it was awesome.
That's awesome.
So that happened, and one day we hiked the Blue Ridge Mountains. Did you see the pictures I posted from that? It's amazing. So cool. So cool. Hiking was awesome. So that happened, and then, I don't know, just a lot of family stuff.
Well, while you were enjoying mountains and fun, relaxing vacations, I was blessed to get flooded on that.
That's awesome. Good for you,
lovely,
Molly.
yeah, thank you. That lovely 4th of July rainfall that we had. So we've been peeling out wet, sopping, smelly carpet. We probably had my neighbor's entire mulch beds in our basement. It just all came in. It wasn't a sewer thing. It was literally just, well, I mean, I guess it was a sewer thing because the sewers didn't suck it up fast enough, but it was all just in the door. They didn't even knock. It just came right through the door.
I feel like it's just been one home disaster
thing after the other. Yes. Yeah. So
Governor Kasich is listening to this. Right? You want to retract your F-bomb just now?
Yeah, Nelly. Hold on, pause.
No, use it, but just
beep it out.
Make
please.
it effing.
Yes. Yes.
And leave in all this discussion about the F-bomb.
Effing every effing day. I said to John the other day, like, if I didn't have my sense of humor, I literally would have jumped off the cliff by now. Because, I mean, now it's at least come to the point where we're starting to pick up paint colors and, like, I redesigned our laundry room. I took a closet out. John allowed me to touch the Sawzall again, so I took a closet.
Touch the
Sawzall.
What is Sawzall?
It's a saw that solves everything. It's a Sawzall. Sawzall.
Solves?
SAWS.
Sawzall.
ALL.
Is that what is a Sawzall?
It's like a big.
Can I describe to the listeners at home what you just did? So
it almost looked like a machine gun.
That's right. It looked like either a garden hose or maybe a power washer.
Yeah. So it's if you wanted to take down a wall quickly, you get this electric saw, like the blades
it cuts through drywall.
Oh,
one of those dudes,
and wood, and yeah.
All right.
So we're at a good point now and thank God for my brother who is in between jobs right now. So it's been a blessing in disguise. We've been able to help him out. He's been able to help us out. So the tile has been ordered from Home Depot, and
good.
I just decided not to go with carpet again since this has happened before.
Yeah.
And we're super excited, and we're going to paint the walls, and we redid the fireplace. We painted it white, which is gorgeous. It was just a regular brick fireplace, and we did it white and black, and it looks spectacular.
Lovely.
So, yeah.
Molly, I am going to cross my fingers and hope that you have no domestic remodeling issues for the rest of the year.
September 3rd is my date. I believe I put a date out on this podcast. No, September 3rd is like my date that I want everything to be done.
Oh. Why? Why September 3rd?
Well, it's my birthday for one, but okay. I just need to be done by it. I need to put a date out there so that no more. I mean, we really technically aren't even finished with the kitchen. I mean, there's just those little, the lights aren't hanging right, so John's got to kind of redo those.
If something bad happens to your house anymore for the rest of the year, I want you to call me, and then I want to just laugh about it.
Yeah.
Right? We just got to, at that point.
That's all you have to do.
That's all you can do.
All you can do.
Yeah.
I think I just want to go to a condo. Although it was funny, I got my Sugar and Lakes dues, because we paid dues. Mm-hmm. Do you pay dues in your development? And I did have a laughing moment at that point. 14 or something of us flooded, and it maybe wasn't the best time to send out the billing.
Come on, Sugar and Lakes.
Compassion to the people who are spending thousands and thousands to to get this back up again. But South Russell's looking into it, and because it is a grading problem, so the best are on it.
Good luck, Gebblers. You know what movie I watched last night?
What?
You watched it too, that Mr. Rogers movie.
So good.
Good for your soul, Molly.
So good.
Yeah.
Did you go to the movie theater to see it?
I went to the Chagrin one, and
Did you sit in the new recliner?
I sure as
Tell us
heck
all
did.
about it.
It was awesome.
Oh my god!
I mean, I will say this. Obviously, a huge improvement over the stationary ones, but didn't recline all the way. Got your feet up all the way, but the back, the back goes back as far as airplane seats.
Well, let's get back to the.
Anyway, the point is,
wasn't
Mr.
it great?
Rogers, dude, I felt.
And do you remember at the annual awards dinner or event, Lee Unkrich talked about that documentary in his talk about how somebody, I don't know what the question was, how do you stay grounded and whatever, and he put it to being raised by Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
And the one time when the pool scene.
Yes.
Where he invited the African American
Washing
mailman.
your feet.
I mean, like, we as kids didn't realize
no idea.
that.
That was revolutionary, though.
That was insane. And then when he went out in front of the Congress, Senate, or whatever, that was
and he's
incredible.
Like, that was really cool. That dude, you know, I spend so much time, as you know, Molly, and you and I both spend a lot of time talking about it, talking about impact, talking about what matters, and people doing with their lives and with their limited time on this planet things that matter. And you can't find a guy or a woman who mattered more than Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, man.
How funny that he was preaching or ministering through his venue. You know, like, that's really what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was a minister.
I was surprised at how, though, like, you never really, I'm always very sensitive to, like, teasing out the religion from anything. Like, if I even smell religion anywhere, I'm like, wait a second.
You were how old?
No, but even now, I mean,
No, I don't think
there's he never talked about Jesus. He never talked about church. He never talked about.
It was the basics.
Well, and that's what was so cool about it is I'm down with the basic concept in religion about treating people well and treating them the way you would want to be treated. And he did all of that without ever talking about God. And
I mean, just how he would sit and listen to the kids, and they had a voice no matter how young they were. And that one little boy that was in the wheelchair and came back later at one of his. Oh my gosh!
That was
and the
heartwarming.
ending was beautiful.
It was.
How they did that.
Let's not.
No, do
spoiler alert.
Do not.
But
you will cry. Bring tissue, because I didn't bring tissue.
No, but you know what? Whenever it cut to a scene where he was talking to a kid, and he was locked in on what that kid, he never looked around. He never was looking at his watch or anything. Like, you could tell he was in.
He wanted to hear
every word. It reminded me of when Rob Sapp was talking about how he thought what made him a good director was letting every kid up there know that they were worthy. You know, and I felt like that's what Fred Rogers was doing. He was letting every kid know, and he said as much, letting everybody know that they were special in some way. And that was a really cool part with the senator when he was like, why does that matter?
You were not getting money.
Yeah.
I mean, when that started, that guy was a jerk.
Yeah, that was very cool.
That was so good. Emily slept through it all.
What? Emily, come on, man.
As a comfort chair.
Dude, I guess
they have the further reclining ones.
they went full recline.
Yeah, see what happens when you go full recline. Good for you, Chagrin
way.
Cinemas.
I know.
You don't want people sleeping.
It was like in a ball.
We're excited about Mamma Mia.
You're going to Mamma Mia?
No, we're excited. I don't think it's out yet.
Oh,
we're
the movie.
Excited to see the new
sequel.
one. Yeah.
Interesting.
We're excited to go see that. Are you going to see Hamilton with your package?
So I did not renew my Broadway package this year because Hamilton was like the main thing I would want to see, and I didn't want to get 8 shows just to see Hamilton.
Right.
Plus, I saw Hamilton in Chicago.
I don't know if I have tickets.
You do? Well, you're going to go.
I don't think so.
Then I want those tickets.
No, someone else is
No.
going to be.
Molly, well, first of all, I don't know who this person is, but you need to go. It's the best show you'll ever see.
I have no desire to listen to rap. I can't, I literally cannot stand rap.
It's not like that.
And I just was I was disappointed in what he did. I
don't care how much you hate rap. You need to go see Hamilton.
I didn't like how they chose, and maybe it was just that the writer and the lead actor at that point.
I see.
I didn't like what they did to make anyone feel uncomfortable who came to your show. That's not the time. And it's not the place. That's not why I buy a theater ticket. Is not to hear political mumbo jumbo. I felt the same way. I love Barbara Streisand. We went to her concert, and she was, a big, I think, Bill Clinton fan at the time because it was during that time. And we spent, well, we didn't, but a lot of money on tickets. And I'm thinking, if I spent the cash that these people spent, I don't want to listen to your political views.
I can respect that,
but that was the lead, and he's not in it anymore. So maybe,
yeah. And he was really pissed off about that whole Puerto Rico thing. So he went off on him.
And what a perfect segue.
I like how since you don't want to go, no one else in the family.
How do you not give it? Dude, can Emily and I go?
It's actually Sam's birthday. It's actually my older daughter's birthday.
It's so good.
But we should take a road trip because Rob Sapp is in Lion King.
We keep talking about a road trip.
No, he's in Michigan.
Oh, in Michigan?
Where? Lansing,
right.
Michigan. Yeah. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and now I can't remember. It was a good one too, but
was it any concert series stuff?
No.
Those have been going relatively well.
Yes, they are. I Do Need You Thursday. And the little boy who comes, so the grandma and her daughter and the little boy, they come every concert, no matter where we are. They come very early. They eat their dinner. I don't know if and they've been coming for years. I love them to death. Well, the little boy has started to private message me, and he's maybe, I don't know, 12. Maybe. So he said, "Oh, well, we missed you at the concert." And I said, "Yeah, I was out of town." And he said, "Well, Alex handled it well, or Mr. Gertzberg."
He said that?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
He handled it well. He said that he had to say everything that you told him to say.
I read it verbatim. I read it and I said, Molly will character assassinate me if I don't get every word right. And I said, she won't let me veer from this, just so you guys know.
No.
All right.
How are we at this podcast? Because we do have one rule and one rule only.
And we don't talk politics.
We don't talk politics.
I think we make exceptions when we have political guests, right?
We are bringing in.
I actually I like Governor Kasich a lot, and I liked him by far out of all of the Republican candidates after the primary. Started, he was going to be my president.
And folks, just so you know, Governor Kasich is not coming into the podcast right now.
Not yet, but he will.
But after he listens to this, he's going to fall in love
Governor,
with us.
we know you're listening, and this seat is yours next.
Yes, but we do have the next best thing, which is Dustin Russell, who is his
Northeast Regional Liaison for
Yes.
Governor John Kasich.
Yes, and I will tell you, I've known Dustin for a couple of years now, just through the chamber, and he's come to red ribbon ceremonies for me and events and stuff representing the governor, and he is always very well dressed. Now I haven't seen him today.
Yeah, he's got he
is he in a suit and tie?
He looks really good.
I mean,
I'm straight, but he looks really good in this suit that he's wearing. It's like an all white, kind of like seersucker deal.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Yes, I got a little sneak peek.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to the Kentucky Derby.
Wherever he is, and it's a joke with a representative from Congressman Dave Joyce's office that one of his reps sometimes comes, and I'll tease him and say, "Look at Dustin."
Right. Why can't you
look like Dustin?
Well, Dustin is he's really active in the chamber. He's always at your gigs. Mm-hmm. He's a local boy, Ravenna High School, Kent State, OSU. He and I have this in common. We were both political science majors. And that's probably all we have in common.
Well, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right.
I'll have to say I didn't really pay much attention to the Saturday morning cartoons about a bill and a...
Yeah, I'm just a bill.
just a bill.
What is that? That's Schoolhouse Rock.
So maybe he can help me out with things.
All right, let's bring him in.
Yes. We joke with the congressman's, Dave Joyce's guy. Sometimes I won't name him, but I always tease him when you two are together. I'm like, can't you dress more like Dustin?
Yeah, right. Well,
wow.
I give credit to my wife.
Oh, okay.
Does she approve?
She approves.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of it.
How long have you been married?
4 years.
Okay, you better hope that's right. I didn't feel very confident in that answer.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Okay,
Yes,
you're good.
4,
You're
right.
good.
I'll tell you what, men need a good woman to tell them how bad they look. And I certainly do. I'm glad you've got a good one like that, Dustin.
Well, once in a while you have to put a tie on in
Right.
this job.
Yes.
There was a big official meeting in Cleveland today
Oh.
that I went to.
Who?
A
Anybody big? Who? What's it all
Jobs
about?
Ohio.
Oh.
You guys know what Jobs Ohio is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell our listeners at home what Jobs Ohio is.
Jobs Ohio is basically the state's economic development corporation that the governor put in place. It was one of his first priority bills. Actually, I think it was the first bill. Wow. House Bill 1 in 2011. And it leveraged the liquor franchise in the state of Ohio and their funding that provides to do some creative and fast-paced economic development decisions. So, when somebody wants to come into Ohio under the old system, the Department of Development, things could take a while. The speed of government.
Yes.
And this changed that. And the quarterly meeting of this corporation entity was today in Cleveland, and they have a really good message.
Which is? Are you allowed to share, or do we have to wait until it gets released?
No, it was a public meeting today.
Okay.
Some of the details, not on the top of my head, but when you take a look at, since the start of this endeavor, over 75,000 jobs in some form in Ohio is attributed to Jobs Ohio projects, billions of dollars in capital improvements in the state. And of course, in your role as the chamber, you are a part of that process. Jobs Ohio is the state entity. They have regional partners, and here in this area, it's Team Neo, and I think there's 4 or 5 other regional partners.
Now, why wouldn't I have ever been reached out to by anyone from Jobs Ohio so we could have a little partnership together?
Well, do you talk to Team Neo?
No, but we should, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good message.
Okay.
There's a good message.
I will say this, and I was telling Molly how Governor Kasich was my favorite of the primary candidates of the Republican.
We do need to tell Dustin that we only have one rule on our podcast, and that is not to talk politics.
But we make
Alex
exceptions.
and I are on different sides of...
Yeah.
Can I make a comment on that?
Please.
Sure.
What's the?
I will not say anything political.
There you go.
But what I will say is this, and this is my opinion. I think it is a shame that we can't have those conversations.
It's gotten pretty bad.
And this is nothing new.
Yeah.
Right.
I come from a politically divided family, mostly politically non-active. I'm the exception. And we never talked politics at big family get-togethers. But I talked politics.
Yeah.
I talked politics with my uncle, who
Right.
was not in line with me, but a good guy. I guess what I'm saying is I think it's too bad that it's so personal.
Right.
You can't just say, hey, let's talk about what Trump did today,
Right.
without it turning into World War III.
And that is true, because I think that was kind of, I set that rule up.
You established that
rule. And it
rule.
is because of that. It's not because I didn't want to have the conversation about it. It's because I didn't want the backlash and all the crap that comes with.
Right.
I knew you and I could handle it because
Yes.
you know I'm really right, and in so many ways. And
Yeah. Well, I think Dustin makes a really
good point. Yes.
And I do want to talk about that, right? Because one thing I think we can all agree on is that our inability to have good public discourse about issues without them getting emotional
because nothing will get
and
fixed.
accusatory. Exactly. All it does is slow us down.
Right.
It just slows us down. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. I think really what it comes down to is that marketing companies, commercials, money, and moneyed people have figured out how to push people's buttons in order to make them vote a certain way and in order to make them outraged. And it's working because we're all outraged all the time. And well, I mean, about politics. Right. Most people, I think that most people are outraged about politics, and that is the result of there being a constant emotional reaction happening, right? It's a machine that involves newspapers and internet and commercials on TV, and it all involves...
And a different generation coming in, too. I think they have a lot to do with it.
It's people having figured out how to push people's buttons. Mm-hmm. So until we're able to fix that, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to have regular discourse.
I think social media has contributed a lot.
Sure has, yeah.
The polarization, because so when I was growing up, I had a 7th grade government teacher of some kind, and he said, "Don't invade somebody's staring area." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Hold your hands out. Hold your hands out like this. This is your area within the width of your arm. That belongs to you." And so what do we have? And I got 2 of them. These things.
Right.
And so it's always in our face. This news, this media, it's breaking news, what's going on. I think it's difficult for us to escape that, and you need to decompress a little.
Yeah.
To not make it so personal, so hanging on, the President of the United States departed Joint Base Andrews today. Who cares?
Right. Let him go and do what he needs to do.
I've got a question about that, right? Because I have to, in order to maintain my serenity and tranquility in life, I have to go on media fasts where I don't watch. And I used to be a news junkie, right? I was a poli-sci major, just like you, and I've really loved. For me, sitting around the table with my family, that's all we talked about was politics. So I've loved that, and now I have to go a week or 2 at a time without turning on the news at all and without really like paying attention to social media. You can't really do that, Dustin, because you're in the political world, right? You work in government. How do you deal with the constant news cycle where they're still pushing those emotional buttons all the time just to get you to click and to get you to stay tuned?
And how do you get your message out, the one that you do want to get out?
This is a 2-part question.
I guess what I do sometimes is I just don't pay attention. If I'm on a family vacation, if I'm on the weekends, I take the phone, I just turn it off, or I leave it somewhere. Good, God forbid.
Right, but even during working hours, 5, 6, 7 days a week when you are working, how do you get past the noise? How do you separate the signal from the noise when there's so much?
He only works
3
days a week.
Yeah, 3 days a week. Yeah,
just kidding.
That's half a day on Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that constant criticism?
So I guess I would answer it this way, partly. One, it's not me. That's the other side of it. I mean, I'm not the governor. When I worked in the House of Representatives, I wasn't the speaker. It's their call. That's their sandbox. And it's my job. And this is why it upset me so much with the way they were treating Sarah Sanders at that restaurant. We are staff people, all right? We're entitled to make a living. And when you go out in public, what is this? Create a crowd. Intimidate me? I mean, is that where we're at? Because I would never do that to somebody else. I have a lot of friends that are Democrats that are staff people, and we get along fine.
Right.
Wait, tell the folks, because I, for one, don't know what you're talking about.
Sarah Sanders is the woman you see giving the press conference. She's the head of communications.
Yeah, the press secretary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she went out with her family after hours to this restaurant in Virginia. And, she's in there, and the owner came out and said, "You got to leave." Why?
Horrible.
Because you work for President Trump.
Yeah.
Man, I wouldn't like that if it was Obama.
Wow.
I wouldn't care. You don't do that.
Right.
So
Because she's a staffer.
she's a
And
staffer.
that's exactly what we were talking about we were talking about Hamilton, the show. That was inappropriate for the lead guy to make Pence feel uncomfortable or make him leave when he came to see the show. That's just not... They're human beings.
Yeah. Now, luckily, in my roles, I haven't been that high profile, so I occasionally...
Not yet.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I guarantee you're welcome at any Chagrin Valley restaurant, Dustin.
Because this is a great community.
That's right.
That was another thing I wrote down I wanted to say later, so remind me about that. So how do I tune it out? I know it's not me.
Okay.
Right? It's the governor. It's the speaker. I believe in what they're saying. I don't always agree, but it's not my place.
And you don't have a hard time taking it personally when, even though it's not you, it's your belief system, it's your ideology.
Or
to
your
some
boss.
extent. Or your
I
boss,
would get
yeah.
defensive if someone was, talking about my coworker.
You take criticism.
Yeah.
You have to. But if it's unfair criticism,
Yeah.
where someone's just trying to be political, that does bother me. And I don't know how you unplug it. I just know that at the end of the day, I try to stay grounded. I have a wife. I have a daughter.
Yeah.
Things are good.
Yeah.
Considering all the problems that people have that are far worse than what I have to deal with every day, I'll take it.
Can you think of a time?
And I can leave any time.
Right.
I don't have to do this.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have chosen a career that is volatile is not the right word, but people throw their emotions at you because of you being part of a party or part of the opposition, right? Can you think of a time when it got like really heated, when it got really ugly and you were like, I got to step outside before I wring this person's neck? Is that every day?
Not every day, but here's how I approach that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm answering your question the way you would like, but this is the answer.
Yeah.
I believe strongly personally, and I've held this belief in the 12 years or so that I worked in the House of Representatives in Columbus, State House, and now working in the governor's office. The people of this country, the people of this state have a right to petition their government.
Yep.
I need to listen.
Yeah.
I need to afford them that much respect to at least listen and find out, is there some place that I can help them? Is there some feedback I can give them? So I was at another chamber. Don't hold that against me. And we were at a ribbon cutting, and afterwards some guy comes up to me and just lays in. Now, he happened to be from an area of the state where I have some family, and I was able to kind of connect with him a little bit and kind of diffuse the situation because he was getting pretty upset. And I just said, hey, you have a right to express to me your opinion, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to a personal thing because I can't do anything about that. That's not me. I'm not so-and-so. But where is it that I can help you? So that's how I try to, I just try to relate to people.
Because you want to help them. You don't want them to be upset. You want to get them to where they can be helped.
I can't always solve their problems, but let me tell you, when I worked at the State House and I would answer the phone for a constituent or something, after they had 10 or 15 minutes to kind of unwind on me a little bit, at the end of it, they said, most of the time, I know you can't do anything for me, but thank you for listening, and thanks for picking the phone up.
Yeah.
That's the least we can do in government at my level.
Speaking of your level, give the listeners a little idea of what it is that you do. What's your day like? And do you drink a beer with the governor?
No, I have never drinking a beer with the governor. Drank a beer.
Sorry. I did get to meet the governor. You guys were here a couple years ago. You at the township hall. You guys had we brought the speaker in. I think it was Dave Joyce was there. The governor was there. It was a rally. Was it a rally for Kasich?
Was it on the political side?
Yeah, it was at the township hall, although you wouldn't be there then.
Yeah, well, I could be there, but not on the clock.
And so tell us your daily, what it's like to be you. And I also want to know about that part of it because there is the political people who maybe run a campaign, and then there is staff. And I know that is very separate, and they cannot cross whatsoever.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, too.
So this is a fun job.
Okay.
All right. I'll just say that out front. And it's funny you bring that question up because I was taking some notes earlier today on this kind of thing because we're sort of in that mode now where we're transitioning of the Kasich administration. The governor's term limited, and he'll be out of office in January. So we're starting to write, about our job and our responsibilities for whoever comes in next. So some of the things that I will do as the regional liaison is to be the regional connection for the governor in this 8-county region that I've been assigned. Ashtabula, Lake Geauga, Cuyahoga, Lorain, Medina, Erie, and Huron. And so there's 2 million people in that 8-county region. And I have an opportunity to discuss and communicate the governor's legislative and policy direction. I don't get into a lot of back and forth. It is what it is. Give me your feedback, and I'll, shoot it up the line. Mm-hmm. I can play a role in representing the governor at various events.
Like our ribbon cuttings?
Like your ribbon cuttings. And I've been to a few of them I wrote down over here.
You have.
And let me just say on that, a lot of people, ribbon cutting. You know how important that is for
Yes, I do.
A business?
Yes,
that means something.
I do. And I will tell you, you are so great at it. When we are meeting with these new businesses that are opening and we're sharing with them that we have a connection to the governor's office and they're probably going to come and they may read a little, they're floored. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And we get the governor's office before we get some of the mayors or the trustees or councilmen of that community, which is, so it is very important.
And no small task for you, too, because I'm guessing you attend a lot of them. I'm guessing that your wife isn't thrilled that you come home every day at 8 o'clock at night because you're at some other ribbon cutting. And that you were at mine here, I believe, and you were at the essay contest reception.
But not all of them are evening either. A lot of red ribbons are during the day as well.
There's some evening stuff, and it can get overbearing from time to time.
Are you flexible with your schedule? Like,
you
can come in a little later if you're doing a night thing?
Yeah, if I'm here and don't, tonight I'll get home at 7:30, so I'll just kind of work it out throughout the week. And
do you have the governor's phone number, cell phone on your cell phone?
We text back and forth. No.
Seriously?
No.
I'm serious. I think those are the questions the listeners want to know.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, I could get a hold of him if I needed to.
Okay.
But I don't have his personal cell.
But you're not calling him to find out what he's having for dinner.
Nah, I'm not on that list.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We all know what Governor Kasich is like as a governor, right? But do you guys ever hang out?
I've actually had a couple of opportunities.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, in politics, sometimes what you see isn't what you get. But with our governor, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
First off, this guy cares about, and I'm not just saying this guy cares about people. And he's really in it for the right reasons, in my view. And he is advocating those positions privately as well as he is publicly. And he's very secure in his beliefs and passionately advocates those positions. And it's not a show.
Yeah.
And there is a big culture in the administration to do the right thing to help people.
Yeah, and I've been a lifelong Democrat, but the one thing I've always loved about Kasich is his view on prison reform and mental illness. And he's been really outspoken about that, about getting people who need help out of the system and getting them the help they need. And I hope he keeps doing that. I hope he keeps running for president.
I was going to say, is anything been announced or what his future is after his term is up?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Is there a time where he needs to express that?
Not that I'm just kind of I don't know a lot about that, the national perspective.
Right.
We as regional liaisons are really, geared towards what's going on in the state. And, we do get some questions about what everybody's political futures are. But
what about yours?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
because your term then, right? You fall under the Governor Kasich.
Right. Yeah. And every governor is entitled to their own people. Mm-hmm. And, we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my wife about this a couple of years ago. And she says, boy, you do all this, A, B, and C. You work a lot. And it comes down to one day in November. Mm-hmm. We talk separate, politics and official side.
Sure.
But let's be honest. I mean, a lot of what I can do on the official side is a result of a political decision that the people make. I said, well, that's it. You just have to learn to live with it.
Right.
And when you're younger, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
When you get older and, you kind of reach a point where what more can I do? You begin to think about other things to do, and that's okay. I mean, you shouldn't be bunkered in.
So how long have you been 8 years?
2 years. So I'll serve in this capacity for the governor for 2 years, And before that, I worked in the House in several capacities for 12 years almost.
Okay.
You were a reading clerk, according to our crack research department.
Oh, jeez.
What does that mean?
What does that mean, Dustin?
Yes.
What does the reading clerk do?
Let's see here. House Bill number 432, Representative Stinciano, Grossman, and others to amend the next sections of the revised code to create Hang On Sloopy as a state rock song for the state of Ohio to include the following lyrics. And I had to read those lyrics.
Were you there for that one, though?
That was me.
Yeah.
Google it. Yeah.
I think I've seen it. I'm going to have to rewatch it now knowing it's you.
So that's the reading clerk. You know, the speaker stands up there, and the clerk will read the journal of the previous day, 101st day, Hall of the House of Representatives, the House met on yada yada. And that's the journal. So I read that. You got to read it quick because nobody cares.
That is awesome.
So all the bills that get introduced, there is a constitutional requirement that they be read 3 times on the floor, and that's the first time. And so you're reading the title, you're performing a constitutional function on behalf of the speaker. I suppose the speaker could read the stuff if he wanted, but
He's above that.
there would take a ding on the reading clerk position.
Isn't
Yeah.
that
That is
is
awesome.
that like anachronistic a little bit? Because it doesn't. I think that would have made sense in the 1700s and the 1800s to have to read something all the way through 3 times.
I know, like the village still has to do that.
I think
in
there's
their
a lot. I think
bylaws.
there's a lot of rituals in government, in lawmaking, that made a lot of sense before technology, but
There's a
I don't know
lot
that
of
they make a
them.
lot of sense anymore.
Well, so I'll geek out here.
Okay.
Working in the clerk's office for a couple of years,
Yeah.
I've kind of got the other side of government. Policy is getting it done. This is why it gets done in a certain way. So in the Ohio House, they operate under Hughes's parliamentary procedure, not Robert's Rules of
Interesting.
Order. Hughes is a guy that was an Ohioan. And around the time, several years ago, a long time ago, he created this parliamentary procedure that the Ohio House has followed ever since. And there's not a lot of differences, but there's some differences. And so what reading the title 3 times does, it journalizes it so the public knows what's going on. You know, it's not a technology thing. So the first time a bill is introduced, somebody theoretically could object to the bill being introduced. It's transparency. It's active engagement. The second time the title is read, it's upon report of a committee, and there's an opportunity to object there to something. And then, of course, the third time is what we all know. That's when you're debating the bill on the floor. And so there's an opportunity there to object by voting no, hitting the little red button. And so it is.
So it's functional. There
Functional.
is a reason to read it 3 times.
Yes.
And each time, someone else, some different. There may be a different reason to object.
It all gets into the journal. So people can read it. When I worked in the House, I would mentor some new staff people. And I'd say, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? I'd say, look, here's what you do. You read the journal every day. Because if it's not in the journal, it didn't happen. So you can see when bills are introduced, when they're referred to committee, when they're reported out, what the amendments were, what the vote totals were. It's not a journal of record, so there's not like it is in Congress where you can read what everybody says word for word. But there's a catalog of proceedings. And it was intended that way because people deserve to know and are entitled to know what their government is doing. So the funny thing is, this was done a couple of times, really. And the first time it happened, I get a copy of the bills on my desk, and I'm reading through the titles to prepare because if there's a big word, that's not the time to figure it out on the floor of the House.
Yes.
So I'm reading this, and I'm going, has anybody here at Broadcast Park here ever read the lyrics to Hang On Sloopy? This isn't exactly a G-rated thing.
Yes.
And I'm reading this, and I'm going, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And people were like, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? Are you going to sing it? And I just said, no, I think I'm just going to read it like I would anything else. I'm not the show here. It's just, let's just get it over with. So I read it the first time. How many times have you ever heard Hang On Sloopy? 100?
Yes.
Have you ever heard someone just read the word?
Right, no.
So that uniqueness of being traditional to how it's supposed to be done created the uniqueness of it. So it went viral. My Facebook page blew up. I had my 15 minutes of fame right there, spent it all on one thing. And so anyhow, the bill goes over to the Senate and it comes back and we got to read the title all over again, to concur in amendments, or it was some other thing that happened where we had to read it again. And so the band shows up and we knew about it this time. So that was a little bit more of a staged thing. And it ended up on like an official Ohio State documentary.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, so that's me reading the thing.
So that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
The Chagrin Doc Fest had that, and the Chamber,
That's
I
right.
wish I would have known it was you, because the Chamber sponsored it, and we had a big hoopla. We had the band,
Right.
old alumni band members come, and oh my gosh, we could have had you read it.
Yeah, well,
Dang it, I missed opportunity.
you know what happens. What are you going to do?
Oh, wow.
Can we talk about gun violence? Can we shift gears to you
From
couldn't
Ohio
possibly
State
get
to gun violence.
Yeah, hang on, Sloopy, to gun violence.
Right.
What's the governor's take on solutions?
So there is a bill in the Ohio House, I can't remember, and in the Senate. So there's companion bills. And these are the results of some discussions from working groups that were actually constituted before a lot of at least the Florida shooting at Marjorie Douglas High School. And so the governor's been wanting to look at this for a while. And, people were in the room of all different sides of this, and they came to a series of recommendations that are intended to, help improve the safety not only in our schools but in our communities. Now,
Like what?
well, I knew you were going to ask that. You're a good attorney. I'm not going to get into a lot of the details because I haven't looked at it in a while, and I don't want to misspeak here. But there are a lot of conforming to federal law. So when the state conforms to federal law, it then allows the state to do something. So if there's a particular action and the feds choose not to press charges, there's the state. What could a prosecutor do?
Yeah.
Now they could go and do some things in various areas. That's very general and not as accurate as I should have it, but
Could somebody look for it and read it
yeah,
at this point?
absolutely. It's all online. The bill has been introduced
Okay.
in the House and in the Senate. Now this is controversial stuff for some people, and there's going to be politics involved. People are going to call it one thing or another.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This is one of those issues that it's hard to get people to reach consensus on because there's so much vitriol.
But it
out
sounds like they did, though. They
well,
put
hopefully,
some people,
if it becomes the law, and
Right.
if it is as far-reaching as is necessary.
but it was for the people that were in the room that were given the task of creating. Now, is it going to make everyone happy? No, but I love the fact that they got people in a room of all sides, and they were tasked with creating this bill. Yes.
Well, look what I have here in my
Well, looky,
hands here.
folks, looky.
So I will read to you just a little bit about what is in this. And this was not edited. This was live as it happened. I found this as you were
Wow.
talking.
I know, right?
This
Well
is a
done.
modern filing
And
system.
it's paper.
It's not. Yeah, I haven't seen people pull paper out. in
I'm a
while.
big paper guy,
Yes,
believe it or not,
yes.
to my detriment
Yes.
from time to time. So there's a really good article, Cincinnati Enquirer, April 23rd of this year, if people are interested in reading a little bit more about this. I'll just give this to you. So the governor signed an executive order in April at the same time that article came out that'll make Ohioans safer from gun violence. And the executive order follows recent reforms proposed by a bipartisan group that the governor convened that recommended changes to improve compliance by local governments and others with the background check systems, kind of what we were just talking about. The reforms were included in legislation introduced in the House and in the Senate. And in this particular instance, the reliability of the NICS system, that's the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, is dependent upon the information submitted by reporting agencies such as clerks of court and local law enforcement agencies. Now, getting this required information into the system in a timely fashion would make it less likely that a prohibited individual is able to purchase a firearm. So this executive order is reconvening a working group and is assessing that group to look at the level of compliance across the state. Because I think in Texas, you had a system where somebody who should have been put on
the list
wasn't for some reason. And here in Ohio, and you can look up these articles.
We'll have links up on our Facebook.
Right.
They're finding that some areas it's tough to keep up. So we're trying to figure out with this component of the executive order, what's going on? Why aren't you caught up? Is there some kind of problem in the way things are reported in? So that's one part of the executive order, as best as I can read it here without.
All right. Yeah, we'll have a link
and when
up.
you say, before you came in, I had said that I'm not caught up on my Saturday morning If I Were a Bill cartoon.
Schoolhouse Rock.
When you said that it's in the Senate and in, so it's a double whatever, what exactly does that mean? Is that a faster route or?
Well, that part that I just read to you was an executive order that won't go through the legislative process. I've got some other things here on what is in the bill specifically. But when I say that's an inside term called a companion legislation. So you've got sponsors in the House and in the Senate, identical bills for the most part, and you drop them and they sort of take a parallel path through committee hearings. And the reasoning behind that is you keep the ball rolling. So when one gets passed, then it flips over to the other house, and there's already been discussion on it. And you probably will look into changing a few things, as happens through amendments. But it is that's just a theory. It's a thought of how to keep the process going. And keep both houses engaged in the conversation.
So it's important. Like it's an important bill, and that's why you have a companion. So that it's something like that.
Sometimes people will think it's an important bill. We should do it this way.
Right.
It's not necessary.
Well, I do need to thank you, not you because you're not the governor, but the governor. You can tell him that Molly Gebler from the Chagrin Valley Chamber said thank you for signing House Bill 44, which made May 24th First Responders Appreciation Day, which was started and helped move quickly with Bob and Joe Royer, who are local residents here, with the help of Senator Dolan, and then signed by the governor. So make sure next time you text him after you ask him what he had for dinner, make sure you tell him that Molly Gebler said thank you.
Well, that gets at one of the points I wanted to bring up about when we talk about what this job is all about and things that you see and do. I just have to say that there are a lot of good people, not just in this area, but all over the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. It takes you back sometimes when you see the just people are just happy to help. Mm-hmm. You put something in front of somebody, the communities generally come together. And so that's been encouraging to see all across the region that I cover. It's just a lot of good people. And that you don't see so much when you work in Columbus. You're working there, you're in the government, you kind of stay down there. You don't really travel so much. Some people do. Staff people, it's limited. But when you're in this role, you really get to see the people in the trenches, so to speak. And it's encouraging.
We've got good people here in the OH.
Yeah.
IO.
I think it's time for the lightning round, Molly. What do you think?
Boy.
I think I'd like to mix it up a little bit this time, Molly.
What?
Yeah, I think the way to do it this lightning round is to ask Dustin for the answers, but then to invite Governor Kasich to send us his answers to the lightning round. Governor, we are challenging you to participate. We are the people, right? I want to know what my governor how he will respond to these 5 or 6 questions. So you want to go first, Molly?
Okay. Dustin.
Yes.
And Governor Kasich.
What
would you do if you just walked in the room right now?
I called
I
him.
would do a selfie with him. You know me. Actually, that's the first thing that Congressman Dave does as soon as he sees me is
Selfie.
we have to do our selfie. And then he always tries to do my look, and it never works out. And then I'm always told by his people that I can't post it because he never looks good.
That's silly.
I know. I love him. What have you been binging lately?
Is this like a Netflix thing? Okay. Well, it's been a while.
Or Hulu. I mean, we have either one are welcome to send us freebies, but
I will say the Rockford Files,
stop it.
which I am a very big fan of. James Garner.
James Garner? No
Wow,
way.
you're going way back. What year would that be?
And so the Rockford Files was 74 to 80, 81 early.
I was going to say, okay, wow. I started binging Ally McBeal, which isn't as far back, but it is kind of back there.
I've seen all 6 seasons, every episode, probably multiple times.
And that's on Netflix?
It is, well, it used to be.
Okay.
And that was why I got a
Rockford
Netflix subscription.
Was just for that.
And they got rid of it. And so I went out and bought the box set.
Oh my gosh.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
That's
so
wonderful.
one of my childhood memories growing up, my dad and I used to, my parents were divorced, so I would go every other weekend with him, and the things that we would do would, sit and watch Superhost on 43 in the morning.
I remember Superhost.
Superhost,
Yeah.
and the other thing is watch reruns of the Rockford Files, which in the mid 80s it wasn't off for that many years.
Right.
And so I always thought my dad was kind of like James Garner. And now he wasn't a detective. He was a working guy. But just his mannerisms, his sense of humor.
Love it. Wow, that's a great one.
Do you know what Governor Kasich is binging right now?
I do not know.
Governor, we're waiting.
What's on your mind, Dustin? What's weighing heavy? What are you thinking about?
Honestly, so when I
Yes.
came in here, my wife sent me a text.
Oh, we've been down that road.
We're killing 2 birds here because that's her next lightning round
my next
question.
lightning round is
Lightning
what was
questions.
your last text that you received or sent, and you don't have to tell us who it's from.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that one right now.
Okay.
Finding a restroom real quick.
Wait,
You-
that
as in
was
you
on
need
your
to find
wife's
one, or you-
mind
No,
yours?
that wasn't on my mind. Somebody sent it to me.
Oh.
And so that was the last text that I received, finding a restroom. So I was at an
I
event earlier
love
today.
that.
And so
that was-
they were trying to, we were getting ready to leave, and a friend of mine was like, hey, I got to find a restroom, and then we'll go.
You should have responded, I'm a liaison, not a magician.
Right. Well, he was on his own with that one. But what's on my mind is my wife sent me this video of my daughter singing "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," mixing it up with the ABC.
Play it into
can
the
we
mic.
play it? Is
Play it into the mic.
Okay. Let me.
That's
Winkle,
outstanding.
winkle, little star.
That's outstanding.
Oh, that is.
So I've been thinking about, I want to get home, see my daughter.
Yes, I want to hear
that's
that.
kinda,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Cutie
I love
patootie.
that. So, what are your lightning rounds? Winkle, winkle.
Dustin,
Yeah.
you're on a desert island for at least 3 months, possibly forever, you don't know, and you can bring any single musician's entire discography, but it can only be one musician. Who is it?
Does this include bands?
Sure.
Oasis.
What?
Wow.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah.
Who's Oasis?
Yeah, that's
Who's Oasis?
80s.
Wonderwall, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a modern? Is that a recent?
Wonderwall.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They started early 90s, about the same time that
you
Nirvana
know the
did.
song.
You know the
Bring
song.
it up,
Yeah.
you too. But yeah, you
That's
know
interesting.
Yeah.
Do they have a lot of albums? Because you're going to be stuck listening to just Oasis on this
For
desert
3
island.
months.
See, again, I
I'm
think
just-
you need to know that some people.
I can ask
it's
follow-up
not-
questions, Molly.
It's not about the length. It's just that we love the music so much that we'll listen for the rest of our lives to one group. That is okay too.
They were around for a long time, early 90s through maybe 10 years ago they broke up, not quite.
Okay.
It's a group of brothers from Manchester, England that sort of fancied themselves as the modern day Beatles and were like, Brit rock or whatever they want to call it at the time. I consider it rock and roll. You actually hear guitars, people playing and writing songs and singing. It's a rarity in this day and age.
Yeah, you don't have a featuring. Do you ever notice that? They can't sing just their music.
They got to bring somebody in.
Yeah.
I actually know Governor Kasich's answer to this question. It's the Grateful Dead. It's obvious. I know.
I don't think he
I know.
looks like a deadhead.
I think he's a closet deadhead.
I
do.
wish I could remember the name of the group, but he does have a group that's sort of obscure that he follows. I can't remember.
Interesting.
Oh,
All right,
I'm
we'll
sure we
find
could
out.
Google that.
He'll email us. Dustin,
Right.
same
Last time I checked.
desert island, right? Same shipwreck,
Yes.
minimum of 3 months,
Yes.
possibly forever. Any single author, and you bring his entire bibliography.
The entire catalog. I'm
Yeah.
celebrating the
of
entire
one
catalog.
author. One author.
Well, I'd say probably toss up, but I got to pick one. I love it when people say pick one and they give you two.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I always reject their
Whoopsie
question.
there,
I
I
always say,
screwed
no,
up.
I'm bringing two. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, what are you going to do? I'm on an island.
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
It's 0 or 2. You pick.
I'll say Mark Levin.
Mark Levin.
Yeah.
Who's Mark Levin? I'm not familiar.
Mark Levin is a nationally syndicated radio host, a fairly conservative guy.
Okay.
He has written several books. I own them all. Read through most of them. A couple of I've read twice. He was a former chief of staff in the Department of Justice during the Reagan administration.
Wow.
He worked under Ed Meese,
Okay.
who's a big name in that circle.
Yeah.
So he really, as far as me personally, my personal enjoyment in listening to politics and talk radio, don't always agree with him. He's probably in line with me pretty closely. So his books are really good for me. They flow nice. I mean, you could sit down and read it, a whole book in a weekend and not even blink an eye.
Man, that's interesting. I really enjoy historical books and biographies, but whenever I think about going like on a desert island, right, I think about fiction. Anyway,
Don't make people.
I'm not. I'm just saying.
Let him pick who he wants to pick, for gosh sake.
I'm reading a book now on
have to change your
Chester
mind.
Arthur. I'm not changing my mind.
I'm not saying you should change your.
But-
Molly, would you
That's
stop?
just-
I'm gonna.
Well,
Really? You really want to listen to them for 3 months or more? Really?
I'm allowed.
what book would you like me to bring?
It's obviously Kurt Vonnegut. No.
That's
Wait,
exactly.
who was the? It was a toss-up. Who was the?
Milton Friedman.
Okay, another political economist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, obviously, Alex would let you take that one. He was more excited about that one. Doesn't he look like he could be in our family? Doesn't he look like a McCurdy?
Yeah.
I think I've said that to you before.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just so you know.
All right. Well,
Yeah, better check
let
that
me know
out.
when
Where did you
Thanksgiving
grow
dinner
up?
starts.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in two places until I was in the 8th grade, Worcester, Ohio. And then my mother's job left. She worked she put handles on pots and pans in an assembly line, and that job zeroed out, and they relocated to Arkansas. So the choice was you'd move to Arkansas or you can move in with your dad. And because my mom was going to be working in the Akron area and wanted me to go to a school system that was similar to what I was used to. And I said, I think I'll go live with Pops. And so I did. And so I grew up primarily in Ravenna, Ohio, which I consider that home.
Okay.
I know two very well-known artists from Ravenna. Do you know who they are? Musicians. Do you know who they are?
From Ravenna, artists, musicians.
Yeah.
Wow. Would you take their music on a desert
I
island?
love them both. They're both awesome.
No.
Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, and the lead singer of Tool.
I guess I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Probably because I didn't know any of the groups.
You never listened to Nine Inch Nails?
9 Inch Nails, I think I've heard of them before, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what kind
And
of.
the guy
I don't
from
think it's my
Tool is
kind of music.
Maynard James Keenan, who now has a winery and has stopped doing death metal, but he's very... He's
The winery.
Well,
He's
good for
very
him.
good. It wasn't
Good
death
for
metal.
him.
Tool was one of the best rock groups.
William Rufus Day is the most famous person, I would say,
From Ravenna?
Former Supreme Court Justice.
More than Trent Reznor? Are you sure?
It's by
I'm
a
joking.
nose.
I'm just joking.
Why don't you tell me who's the most successful person?
Exactly.
I'm just joking.
You're getting it now, Dustin.
Oh, all right.
Last one.
I've added a lightning
my
round
goodness
question.
Gracious. There's
There's 2 more lightning round
allowed.
questions. All right. The penultimate one is, what habit or routine do you think you've gotten the most mileage out of?
Yeah, I guess I think we all have a routine, and I think routine is important.
Yeah.
Some of the things I like to do is I'll get up in the morning and just kind of look at the day. What do I got going on? And just kind of get in the right frame of mind. I believe that you should accomplish something as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's making the bed.
Yeah.
You've done something.
I'm a fan of that one.
And then get going.
Could you come over to my house and make my bed? Will that make you feel like you accomplished something?
It's enough to make mine. But if that's what's needed, if that's what's needed in the service of the state of Ohio.
That is true. I love that. Yeah. Trust me, we just flooded, so whatever
Sometimes you
help
gotta
I
take
can
one
get.
for the team.
Geez, what a nightmare.
Yeah, it was.
All right.
It is a nightmare.
Final lightning round question, and I can't wait to get yours and the governor's answer to this. An embarrassing story about yourself, or an embarrassing thing about yourself that no one else knows, or that very few people know.
Okay. I'll leave the governor to answer that.
Well, we
one.
can probably just YouTube that. I'm sure if
Well, no, 'cause
he
then
did anything
on
stupid, it would be
YouTube.
up on YouTube.
Yeah, I would like to be employed until January.
Yes.
So I'll stress the second part. I don't think it's really embarrassing, but it is rare that someone would know it. So when I was doing the reading clerk stuff, I found out that my wife, then girlfriend, would tune in while she was at work to watch me in house session.
That's cute.
Yeah, and I had no idea. And so we were at one of her work events, and they were telling me, "Oh, she watches you all the time." And so the relationship progressed, and you get to the point where you get, I love you too, that whole stuff. And we mean it. And I said, well, I tell you what, at the start of session, when I read the journal the previous day, and you can go back and look at this stuff. I was the reading clerk 2013 and 14. I told her, I said, I will fix my tie, and that means I love you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there I am,
that.
The clerk will read the journal of the previous day, Hall of the House of Representatives, and then you just fix your tie.
I love that.
So she got a kick out of that, and
I do that every time I'm on Kicking It with Kenny for the restaurant week. I go like, if you look back, I go like this, and that's for my husband.
oh, that's
For the
cool.
listeners at home, Molly just
I touched
tweaked.
my ear. I'm sorry. Yeah, we
Pulled
should
on
have
her earring.
we should have not told them, and they could go look to figure out what it is that I do. Oh, I have one more that I think maybe we'll enter it
Another
in.
lightning
Yes.
round?
This
What
has
are
been
you-
a heck of a lightning round.
What are you proud of? Alex doesn't like it, but it's staying.
What should I be proud of?
I'm gonna jump all over. No, go ahead. I'm just joking.
Well, I guess I'm proud of the fact that I think I try to do things the right way in the job that I have. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud that, things have worked out the way that they have. And so personally, I've been able to do some good stuff to help a few people out here and there. So I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud to be from Ohio.
OH.
IO. I'm proud to be from Ravenna, Worcester. How many people really have pride in their hometown anymore? Not a lot. I've learned something in all of those stops along the way from some people that many of which took the time to help me out along the way. And I wouldn't be here without their help and support. And so I guess in a way I'm proud of that it happened the way that it did. And there's still a lot more. It's interesting you ask that question because Friday I turned 40.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dustin.
Yeah.
Big 4-0.
Big 40.
Yeah. That means nothing.
Well, age is mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I thought, like I told my wife the other day, I'm starting to take inventory, where I've been at in life, what I've done, what's worked out, what hasn't. Why do I believe what I believe? To your points earlier about politics and personal beliefs and things, And so then you begin to you go look and you look back at those things that you've done that you feel good about. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important when anytime really, but when you hit a milestone, you have to kind of remind yourself that you've done something. You just don't get up every morning and go to work and pick the kid up and go to dinner. You do other things. Mm-hmm. And one thing that's kind of helped me along the way is the journaling, not like writing your diary, but picking a goal and where do you want to be in 13 weeks, 26 weeks or whatever, mm-hmm. and keeping track of your progress along the way. What are your victories for the day? I'm starting to get into that a little bit more.
Well, this has been so
lovely.
Fun.
Just lovely.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
my
Dustin.
gosh,
Thanks,
yes.
Governor, for the email you're going to send us.
I'm sure that's coming.
Any news, anything that you're working on that you'd want our billion listeners at home to know
Get
about?
your note cards out.
Well, I'll say this. So people listening to this may have a question about state government or something like that. You can call me. The office line is 216-787-3471. I have a cell phone on here. It's a work cell phone. I guess you can call that too. Molly just took a picture of it. 216-906-0751. 216-906-0751.
All right.
And if you call now,
We'll
throw in a
get
second set of knives.
Right.
Half off the next constituent case.
And email?
Just dustin.russell@governor.ohio.gov.
All right. Molly, are you working on anything interesting that you'd like to share with our
Just
billion listeners?
Cleaning up after the flood.
Yeesh.
Retiling, repainting, re-drywalling. Just all that. What about you, Alex?
I'm working on something for the service that we're offering called Cover My Six. And I don't know that I'm ready to... Well, here, I'll mention this. Here's what I'll mention.
Every time we say cover my six, I think cover my ass. But
Well, that's why we called
right.
it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
that's
Dustin,
what
Cover
it's
My
doing.
Six is a legal audit of the 6 areas that a business is most likely to get sued for if they get it wrong, right? Customer relations, employment relations, vendors, corporate insurance, and then IT internet, right? And one thing that we are starting to do is work with clients and potential clients to send us their customer agreements and their employee handbooks. And just by looking at them for about 15 minutes, I can tell them if there are minefields there. So that's something that we're working on, that we're rolling out sort of systematically in the next month or so. That and also legal bills, right? So we're really good at being able to tell if someone is paying too much for lawyers. So one thing that we're going to be doing is working with potential clients to no cost, no obligation, review your customer agreement, review your employee handbook, review your legal bills, and do a quick and dirty analysis to show you where you're exposed and where you've got overspending.
Because your whole point is that you don't want
Right.
to represent them in court.
Reactively. That's right.
Correct.
We want to help them be proactive.
Correct.
Because when you're reactive, you're spending way too much money to solve one little problem, and that's the problem that you're being sued for. If you're proactive, you could spend a fraction of that and solve a whole lot of problems. Because there
You're
isn't.
a problem solver, Alex Kurtzberg.
We solve problems, Molly Gebler.
You know what? That should be your company tagline.
Oh my goodness, it is.
It is.
How about that? All right, kids. So anyway, if you go to covermy6.com, you'll be able to see more information about that. And if you go to gertzberglaw.com, you'll see everything else that we're working
And
on.
don't forget to send Molly some Home Depot gift cards.
Right.
Or
Wait,
Home
what?
Depot should
Wait,
just
what?
send it to me.
Oh, send Home Depot
Home
gift
Depot,
cards to
yes.
Molly so she can remodel her.
Yeah.
Really, Home Depot?
Well, they're sponsoring my house for sure.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And if you want to see all of the cool things that Molly's working on, you just go to cvcc.org,
Sure.
Chagrin Valley Chamber. And you should also, since you've got nothing else to do except go on all these websites, right?
Like
You,
us.
you might as well go to thebest.podcast.ever.com and click on subscribe, or then, or alternatively, go to our Facebook page and click on like. Anyway, kids, thanks for tuning in and listening this long. Governor will be looking for that email. Dustin, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Yes, it was so awesome.
Thank
That
you
was
for
good.
having me. I had a great
Thanks,
time.
Molly.
Thank you.
Later.
Bye.
What's up, Gene Friedman?
I'm good, Alex. How are you?
Good. Today, Gene, we are talking about S corporations. And specifically, we're talking about limited liability companies, or LLCs, who classify themselves as an S corp. So there's different things that such companies have to do that's different from what LLCs who are not classifying themselves as S corps have to do. And before we get into what those differences are, talk for a minute about why a company would want to be classified as an S corp versus any other entity.
Sure. So LLC structure in general, it's very appealing for owners of closely held businesses because of the flexibility it offers and the very favorable protections it offers from creditors. That's why a lot of small business owners want to form LLCs as far as a legal entity is concerned. Now, tax classification is a separate matter. While an LLC is by default a partnership, there's certainly a trend now. There's a lot more LLC owners who are now making an election to be classified as a small business corporation for tax purposes, or known as S Corp.
So now someone has been advised to classify themselves as an S corporation. What do they have to know, Gene, about how they should operate?
There's certainly a lot of things. We won't be able to discuss everything that they should know in this short period of time that we have to discuss this today, but I do want to focus on three main things. And the first of that being, the operating agreement and the considerations for that. Second being documenting shareholder loans. And the third thing being the owner's salaries.
So operating agreement, let's start there. And what is an operating agreement?
So an operating agreement, it's a contract. It's a contract between the owners of the company and the company, in its most simplest terms. And the IRS will typically use that to hold the LLC and its members accountable.
And does the operating agreement say that how it should be, the company should be classified?
So the majority of LLC operating agreements are drafted with partnership tax provisions. Those provisions are not permitted in entity if an entity is to be classified as an S corporation. One common pitfall is violating the one class of stock rule. There are several requirements to be deemed an S corp, and one of those being the one class of stock.
And just as an aside, the other two are owners have to be
non-resident aliens. You can't have non-resident aliens be
Right.
owners of an LLC. You can't have an LLC with more than 100 shareholders. They're really members of an LLC, but when we
Right.
talk about an S corp, it's really shareholders. And you cannot have corporate entities own interest in an LLC unless you qualify as and there's a specific. It's called Q sub.
Right. And you can't have more than one class of stock or membership interests.
Just in terms of speaking of the operating agreement, you just have to be very careful of how those provisions are written in there. Obviously, you would have different tax returns you're filing and different elections you're taking with the IRS. But the suggestion that I have is, it's probably tempting for business owners to go ahead and just reuse an operating agreement from another LLC that they own. But my advice is to talk to a business attorney and before adopting any LLC operating agreement for the S corporation to see what specific restrictions they should have in there. For example, one thing that I like to put in my agreement would be, there's and this is pretty common, is going to have restrictions on transfer. You would have that in any operating agreement. But with respect to an S corp company, you would want to have restrictions that would destroy the S corp election status.
Yeah, you want to make sure that those are not, that kind of language is not there.
That would be basically those restrictions would void those transfers would void would be void if they would work to destroy that S corp status.
Right. What's another difference between operating an S corp and any other entity?
Another difference is you got to be very careful and pay close attention to shareholder loans, and this goes back to the one class of stock rule, so you want to be careful not to basically properly document and follow the terms of any loans that are made between the shareholder and the company. Because loans can be viewed as disguised distributions and cause the termination of the S corp status.
So, in other words, if a shareholder has to be repaid first, then before distributions go out, then the IRS can say, hey, you're really just giving yourself preferred distribution treatment.
Exactly. The IRS can say, well, how do you substantiate this being a loan and not just a preference that you're taking, that you're paying yourself back, that are from the profits of the company?
So what's the suggestion to minimize the risk there?
So there's several suggested steps to take. First, make sure that the loan is in writing, and the loan should be drafted contemporaneously with when the loan is actually made, preferably by an attorney. The second suggestion is make sure that the loan has economic substance. You want to have adequate interest. Just like somebody would go to take a loan from a third party, they would probably be asking for some kind of an interest on the principal. So you should have a reasonable interest rate within that loan. The third suggestion is if an LLC has other bank loans, or basically loans with institutional lenders, make sure that the shareholder loan does not violate any of the covenants in these other loans. At the very least, you would want to notify the lender and get their consent.
And that's true regardless of it, whether it's an S corp or not. That's just a good practice.
That's a good practice, exactly.
Banks don't like shareholders taking money out before paying them back. Yes. As a general proposition, whether it's through a loan or otherwise, but especially if it's a personal loan from the company.
Agreed. And then most importantly is follow and adhere to the terms of the loan. So if the loan is going to say that there's going to be repayments made on certain dates with certain interest, that's what you would want to follow. And if you don't want to risk the IRS taking a position that this is not a bona fide loan. It goes in the same basket with setting up a separate bank account for the company and using the company card to pay business expenses as opposed to personal expenses, and absolutely the same respect, using the company funds as a personal piggy bank and not having true loans.
All right, Gene, what else you got?
Well, the last thing we're going to talk about today is making sure to pay the shareholder employees a reasonable salary.
And this is all still part of the S corp distinction.
So here's the key distinction between a typical LLC, which is by default a partnership, and an S corp LLC. So instead of guaranteed payments that LLC members usually receive in a partnership LLC, shareholder employees have to pay themselves a salary, and then separately, if there's net profits left over in the business, they also take distributions of those net profits. The IRS can come in and reclassify profit distributions as salary and assess tax penalties and interest. And the reason for this is, and we actually touched very briefly on that in the beginning, but the S corp profit distributions are not subject to certain self-employment taxes. I believe they're called FICA taxes. So There's which are really Social Security and Medicare, and the tax authorities do not, they want to prevent abuse of the tax laws. And the key thing to note here is that shareholder salaries should not be arbitrary. You want to be able to consider certain factors to establish what that reasonable salary should be. And that could be the services performed and the job description of the shareholder employee, and as well as how profitable the company will be. My suggestion is still to consult with a tax advisor prior to setting the salaries, because lower shareholder salary may be reasonable.
Good stuff. Anything else, Gene?
That's all I have for today.
Good stuff. So, folks, if you go to GertzbergLaw.com and click on Professionals and go to Gene Friedman, you'll see his handsome face smiling back at you, and you'll get to read all about it. And you'll also be able to listen to his last 10-minute legal talk when we talked about real estate leases. There's also lots of good articles there. And if you are a Russian-speaking person, so is Gene, and he actually has his own Russian language page. So, Gene, thank you very much. And, folks, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Alex.